Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Andy Potter.
Hello.
And Jeff Andersen.
Howdy.
Today we'll be discussing the Star Wars Rebels series finale that aired Monday night. That is episodes 14, A Fool's Hope, and episode 15, Family Reunion and Farewell. This is a spoiler podcast. We're going to talk about everything that has happened in these episodes and the rest of the series. So if you haven't watched them, go watch them and come back. Find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes, where we appreciate your star ratings. Or search for Overly Animated on your favorite podcatcher. Okay, so let's just start off with your initial reactions to this finale. Did you guys like it? Did you guys hate it? I know what Andy thinks, so I'm just going to go straight to you. Andy, what did you think?
This was a very fitting finale for a very uneven show, as someone in our Discord said. It wasn't that good. It was very meh. There were a couple of moments where it nearly reached greatness, and it just tried to steer away from every chance it had to be that. I did like seeing a couple things, but they didn't really pay off in any way. Like, I like seeing Palpatine, I like seeing the Emperor, but that moment wasn't really that great in hindsight. In the moment, it was like, whoa, this is so cool. And then, obviously, the ending was a Deus Ex Machina, but then we got Sabine, so we'll talk about it, I think, in depth, the ending, but I'm a little meh on this finale as a whole.
Okay. Jeff, what did you think?
I'm going to offer a counterpoint. I thought it was like the best finale, one of the best finales I've ever seen in a show. Just the way the whole show, the scope of the show kind of expanded in the past while, and then it came down, and they kind of hung a lamp on this. It just centered back on Lothal. And really, it might have come down to the fact that my expectations weren't too high for this episode, because coming in episodes 13 or 12 and 13 with the temple arc, I was like, okay, so are we going to do another Clone Wars thing where it's much smaller scale, little mini stories, because we won't have anything left to say? But instead they really knocked it out of the park, I think. Although I don't know if I can articulate and defend my point as well as Andy, so I love it.
Okay, well, I'm more in the middle between the two of you. I don't think it's meh. I think it's a really great finale for the story they wanted to tell. I don't know how to articulate this, but it's like any issues I have with the finale aren't issues with the finale or issues I have with the series. So I don't, like, it's not the finale's fault that say it's not the finale's fault that say the space whales exist. That's something that was decided in season 2. But I don't think they're a Deus Ex Machina because they were introduced in season 2. So and they were set up throughout the episode. So just kind of to, like, for what they set out to do and just taking it for what it is, I think it's a really well done finale. And I really enjoyed it. But I don't know. I'm on the opinion that if I ask it to do something else, like, I think I'd be asking for another show. And what this finale did is stay true to the show and to its characters and finish the story it set out to tell. And I commend it for it. Yes,
but
Andy.
I think most of the problems that come from it are the fact that it is this show. Like, most of the problems with this finale, and I don't think it's fair to say that, oh, the show couldn't have been better, because I think it could have been. And because, like, I think the biggest problem with it are the ways that it tries to stay kid-friendly in some ways, because I don't usually say that word on this kind of podcast, but, like, the wolves would be, like, chomping down on people and not actually hurting them. People were constantly dodging around gunshots and lightsabers and never really getting hurt in any ways, and it felt like there were no stakes at any point in this finale. It was just really frustrating to watch at times. I'm like, why is no one getting hurt from anything that's going on? And someone finally did get hurt by a blaster shot, but it wasn't the shot that I thought would kill somebody. It just was really frustrating.
I'm just saying that that's not, like, those parameters, those things are problems that the show has had continuously throughout. That's not necessarily like, oh, it's this finale is bad because of this. It's like, these are problems that the series has had always. This is something that the series has always had issues with. And I've kind of, I guess with this finale, I guess with this end, I've just kind of come to terms with, all right, this is the story they wanted to tell, and this is the way they wanted to tell it. The story, like the actual series itself, I could say, okay, this is what I would have done differently. This is what I think is weak from it. But as a finale to this story overall, more in a macro level, I thought I couldn't see it end any other way, if that makes sense. It fits with the characters, is what I'm saying.
I guess my point is that I don't really like moving the goalpost that way. Like, I don't really like the idea, because it feels like that. It feels like we're moving the goalpost because the show is not as great, but we give the finale a pass because the show isn't as good overall. Like,
it's not
I don't
necessarily
like that.
A pass. It's more of like, okay, I'm taking this for what it is. Like, these parameters have already been set. Like, it's not necessarily like, look, the greatness of this finale isn't as great as the last 2 episodes we got. Like, absolutely not. That is the great, like, episode 13 is, for me, one of the highest points of what could be of this series. But if, say, for instance, the finale didn't incorporate, like, we'll get into more, like, my reasoning behind, like, the space whales and all that later. But, you know, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm just going to go easy on this finale. But it's less of that and more of, this is, like, I can't change this story. This is the story they wanted to tell. Like, I can rag on this series for all these problems, but in the context of this, like, this is the only finale I could see it happening. I'm not saying it's the greatest piece of television, but I am saying, like, every problem and issue I have with the show, I can't keep saying, like, oh, it's happening again and again in every episode, because then that would be not worthwhile. Because it's like, well, yeah, because that's the point of the show. If these issues that I have with the show, if I wanted them to change, it's like, that's less a problem of like an episode and more a problem just with the direction of the show, if that makes any sense.
Well, maybe we can talk about that later when we get to the finale and talk about the season as a whole. We can talk more about this.
All right, cool. Let's move on to episode 14 then. Let's do like a kind of episode breakdown of A Fool's Hope. And this is one that I kind of want to move past kind of quickly because it is pretty much a lot of setup. So we start off with Hera gathering every character remotely liked by the audience. Yes. We have Hondo, we have Ketsu, we have Callus, we have everybody. Everybody we like is there. And they get together because they have to help Ezra free Lothal. And technically they're not backed by the rebels, which is something we've already established because it's seen as a lost cause, but something interesting that I want to keep pointing out. That technically this, like, where does this lie in terms of, like, can the rebels, like, looking back when they're writing history say, oh yes, we helped free Lothal? It's like, well, you didn't really help.
No.
Like, can we say, like, this is, like, a rebels, like, win or no?
I don't think it is. This is just a win against the Empire, and it's just kind of maybe this group became a cell in the rebels in the future, but this is before that. Gotcha. And what about you, Jeff? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was mainly just let's get all the familiar faces together, not necessarily rebel backed. Because, you know, they sort of gave up on Lothal after they tried, you know, in episode 10 or 11. But that's really all they were willing to do. So
totally. I'm just asking, like, if looking back, they're like, oh, look, we helped you. It's like, will they be that type of person? They're like trying to take credit for someone else. I don't know. I just see that often in history that it's like, what would happen in this situation?
I guess
yes.
They did put Syndulla on the ground, technically. So
that's true.
And they also, they'd probably claim that, like, oh, we blew up those fuel depots. We did it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, fair. Okay, fair. All right, so basically they gather together and they're on their way to meet Ezra to help him free Lothal. And Ezra has a vision that Thrawn is returning to Lothal. So he's like, we gotta hurry up. We gotta go. We gotta move. In a very similar kind of parallel to what happened a couple episodes back with Kanan, he has a vision. He knows what he has to do. Very reminiscent. Do you think that moved a little fast? Do you think that it's kind of... Do you think that... this is something that I just... With this parallel that I saw with this episode, I felt like, maybe Kanan should have died a little earlier in the season. Because I feel like I needed a little bit more growth from Ezra since the death of Kanan in order to be like, I don't know... to, like, accept, like, okay, I'm gonna follow the same path my master did, instead of it being so fast.
So your sense is that this is sort of like a copycat move, like, oh shoot, my master just did this, let's go do it again.
Not necessarily like, ooh, my master did this. It's more like not only, okay, like Kanan had a vision of his death, he did die. So he had a vision of his death and he accepted it and he followed this plan. He let the vision be and followed a plan and did what he had to do, knowing that this moment was coming. So the fact that like just as quickly, like 3 episodes later, Ezra does the same exact thing where he's like, oh yes, I have a vision now. Like, do you, like, I don't know. I would have preferred him not knowing that this was coming, maybe. And then at the moment or something. What do you think, Andy? I
think I'd be okay with it. I agree with you if Kanan died earlier in the season, because right now it just feels like Ezra got the wrong lesson out of all of this. That's what it feels like to me. He learned the wrong thing from Kanan when he went to the past, when he went to the thing with Ahsoka, and when he came to terms with the fact that Kanan was gone. It feels like Ezra is just like, oh, so I'm supposed to sacrifice myself to help everybody. Like, no, that's not what you're supposed to learn here, Ezra.
Well, I mean, he did later on. I thought that the lesson was learning to let go.
Yeah, but it felt like he learned this. He learned
this too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Because it is very much like, in a way, kind of follows the beat by beat of what Kanan does. In a way. So I don't know. I just thought that was a little bit soon. But yeah, so he speeds up his plan and he decides to do this kind of Ryder, the former governor of Lothal, kind of double-crossing spy plan to get into the Empire-controlled city. What did you guys think of this plan? Did you at any point think, oh wow, Ryder did double-cross the group, the gang? Like, what did you think of this?
I'm pretty easy to fool, I guess. I was like, wait a minute, I don't know, because they're being pretty convincing, so... I mean, it wasn't a whole shocker when he turned out to be still good, but it wasn't obvious to me the entire time.
Gotcha.
Although, as I've heard others say, like this plan was one of these ridiculously convolutional ones. Like the whole thing falls apart if Price just doesn't show up. You know?
Yeah, very true. What about you, Andy? Did you at any point think, oh wow, he actually betrayed them?
I did for a little bit, and I think this is not one of the weaker elements of the finale. This is just this seemed like a classic Star Wars type thing where you're not quite sure who betrayed who, and I was fine with this. I liked this.
Okay, cool. I actually did get a little bit convinced, like in the moment where he tells he doesn't fire at the stormtroopers and he kind of lets them go. I was like, oh wow, he actually did betray him. Because at first I was like, there's no way, there's something going on. But then eventually I was like, okay, I was right in my initial instinct. But then later I fell back on it. But let's talk. So Hera gets through the blockade with the help of Hondo in another similar kind of Star Wars crazy plan. Which similarly, if Price hadn't come, Ezra's plan wouldn't have worked. Well, similarly, if any ship hadn't come just at the right time, Hera wouldn't have gotten through. So it's also like a lot of relying on some sort of like destiny, mystical kind of thing, the Force ? Doing the work here. And essentially they all reunite, the wolves help them when they're outnumbered, and Price is captured. And that's essentially what happens in episode 14. Like, really, it's just a very formulaic, like, we got to get through this, and this, and set everything up for the later payoff. So were you guys entertained by this setup, or were you guys just like, okay, let's get on with it?
I was highly entertained by the battle scenes. Like, it was super dynamic. Sabine flying around, just being her awesome self. Really great cinematography there, I thought.
Totally. I mean, whenever you have a Mandalorian doing something in this show, it's always a highlight, in my opinion. But Andy, what about you? What did you think of episode 14?
I think you already know what I thought of it. I was pretty bored by it. I didn't like it that much. I thought there were a couple points that were a little absurd, but it wasn't bad by any stretch. It was just kind of boring to me. One question I did have though, what's the assassin, the guy that runs around on 4 legs and he had that double edged, what's his name?
Rook.
Rook, what did Sabine and Zeb actually do to him? Because I know they sent him off in a cart.
Oh, I mean, they just
painted
painted him. Yeah, they just spray painted him.
They just spray painted him? Okay.
Knocked him out and spray painted him and gave him back.
I thought Sabine like wrote a message on him or something, and I guess she didn't.
You know what is so weird? I was rewatching An Inside Man from season 3, and this is the scene. This is where Ezra infiltrates the Imperial forces to try and extract Fulcrum, and he ends up and Fulcrum ends up in Thrawn's office and sees him
such
fighting.
A good episode.
Yeah, he sees him fighting with those training droids, and the code to disable them is Rook.
Oh,
like what the heck?
Like, is there are you suggesting that there's some more like intimate connection between Rook and Thrawn?
Not at all, but that's that's
not at all, but yes.
That's not a weird conclusion to draw, even though it's really weird to think about.
That is true. I mean, that is something that I was partly disappointed with the finale, is that we don't get a lot of Thrawn fighting physically.
Yeah.
Like, if we weren't going to get it, why show him being so physically able in that scene?
Yeah, they really that scene really was me thinking that they were showing like, oh yeah, Thrawn can fight when he needs.
Well, that kind of paid off in 0 Hour, like where he really gave Fulcrum the beatdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did do that.
Yeah, fair.
But maybe Rook is just like a code word, and he just used it.
Maybe.
Anyways, that's not important to the finale.
Okay. Do you think like Rook is just surviving too much now? Like he got thrown off a cliff, and he somehow manages to like grab onto the rock without.
The fact that he's surviving is it's about as annoying as Azula surviving everything, which means not really, just like cool. It's like great, we have an actual competent villain. You know?
But how competent is him? Like, for instance, like with Azula, we had that epic ending for her, whereas with Rook, we didn't really get that.
Right. So maybe he's not super confident or competent. He's just like they did a very good job of making him annoying to the good guys enough that it was good. It was great to see him bumped off, at least for me.
Gotcha. Totally. So let's then move on to episode 15 then. Because, I mean, episode 14, again, for me, I wouldn't say I was bored, especially on second viewing. I enjoyed the fighting a lot more. Like, in the first viewing, I was just like, come on, show me the epicness. Second viewing, I was like, oh, I actually really enjoy this, this orchestration of like this dynamic sequence that they gave us, which is really nice. But let us move on to episode 15, which is Family Reunion and Farewell. This is the big 45-minute episode that ends the series. So we have a new plan. Price takes the crew to the communication dome as, quote, prisoners. And I don't quite understand. Like, I understand why she said yes, because she thinks, of course you guys aren't going to outman everybody once you get there. But at the same time, it's like, dude, they've proven time and time again that when you underestimate them, they win. Like, can you
also got to look for options, too.
True, but I don't know. True, you're right. But at the same time, I was just a little bit miffed by Price. I was just like, really? You're just gonna take them there knowing that, like, they have a Jedi, so it's hard enough, and you don't know Thrawn is coming. Like, you don't know how soon. I don't know. That was a little bit annoying for me. But I
was kind of expecting them to do the route. Like, look, Thrawn, like, you failed utterly. Thrawn is probably going to kill you, so why don't you help us? And then that would give her a chance to she would obviously be like, no, I serve my empire, yada, but it would have been an interesting move to make.
Yes, that would have been interesting. If they had somehow convinced her, or maybe part of like the plot throughout is showing someone turn, kind of similar to Callus, I don't know, there could have been something interesting done there. I feel like if she had been treated more as a complicated character than simply Thrawn's like right-hand man woman, then maybe it would have been, we would have had like a little bit of a more interesting outcome. But till now, I just thought, like, really, you're so quickly are willing to, like, I don't know. I would have preferred her die for her empire than trying to save her skin with the wolves, if that makes sense.
I agree, and that's why I think it wouldn't have played well to have her actually switch sides. But
yeah,
totally.
All right, so we have a conversation on the way to the kind of communication dome with Ezra and Sabine. Another kind of similar parallel to Kanan at the end of his journey, where Ezra tells Sabine, I'm counting on you. And she's like, what are you talking about? Andy, like, what did you think of this? Like, did you know after this conversation that Ezra was probably going to die?
Yes.
100%.
100%. I knew that this was happening. I knew they weren't going to subvert this, but what I did like was that there was no feeling from this that I don't feel like they were romantic in any way from this scene. And I actually really like that. Like, they were just really good friends and they really appreciated each other. And I can tell that because Sabine wasn't like worried he was going to die. She was just confused, like completely confused about what was going on. Nothing really more than that.
Yeah. I mean, I was expecting them, like, I won't lie. I was expecting there to be a romantic element simply because there's always a romantic element. So the fact that they didn't, the fact that they just played it off as her just being confused and then later on in the episode, like just going, like moving forward, just being like, okay, this happened. We got to keep going and not really spending time like sobbing and being like, no, Ezra, don't. Like, I don't know. Like, they could have done the cliche and done the romance, and instead they don't. And
I think it makes the epilogue better too that it isn't there, because I think it gives Sabine more agency, despite the fact that Ezra was the one who's pushing her forward in the epilogue. It gives her more agency that it isn't like I'm hunting for my soulmate or something. She's doing it for herself at the end, clearly, and I like that a lot.
Right. Yes, I 100% agree. Yeah, Jeff, what did you think of a relationship?
Well, so the vision earlier I thought was like, I wasn't too bothered by how fast it happened. Like, Jedi can have visions, okay, that's fine. This, however, did seem very derivative of what happened exactly, 3 episodes ago, or like, like the last conversations that Kanan has with Ezra. It's like, you're so good, and I trust you so much, etc. However, I see like the narrative need for this. What they were going for is like they introduced this notion at this point that he always counts on her. They'll emphasize it again later, and then it ties back at the very end when Sabine's like, "Oh, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. I need to go find him."
Yeah, totally.
So in that sense, it seems necessary because of what they were doing, but it did seem derivative to me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it just beat by beat. If they had done something a little different, or maybe even in like a different area, a different location, not when they're like during them, I don't know. They could have done something to change it up slightly, but I agree. It just felt a little bit too repetitive. But, so yeah, they arrive at this communication dome and they execute Protocol 13, what I call the Death Star order, to evacuate all Empire personnel. And they, on their way to, like, as they do this, some crew was given, like, a special mission by Ezra to do something, but Rook gets in the way and stops them, like, stalls them from doing it. He gets away and contacts Thrawn, tells him, yo, this is happening. What do I do? Thrawn tells him, shut off the shield generators, and he does so. Thrawn shows up, fires at the city and civilians, and tells Ezra, like, if he doesn't come alone to see him, he will keep killing people. Ezra says, yes, I'll come, and sneaks off while everyone else tries to figure out how to restart the generators. So what do you think up to this, like, where were your emotions? Like, walk me through, like, what you're thinking about during this, like, moment that you were watching the episode. Like, did you expect Palpatine was going to show up? Did you expect it to be more of a Thrawn-Ezra thing? Do you wish that it was a Thrawn-Ezra thing that was going to happen? Like, walk me through, one, how kind of everything that led up to the point of Ezra arriving at Thrawn's ship, and what happens after.
I think the most frustrating part about this finale is that the Thrawn-Ezra conflict is not a philosophical one in really any way. A lot of Star Wars movies hinge on like a philosophical battle. Like Episode 8 had a really big that was a big part of it. A lot of philosophical battles between Rey and Kylo. But this movie, this episode, just I didn't feel like Thrawn and Ezra were enemies for any other reason besides Thrawn was there and Ezra was there, and I didn't like that part of it. Like, I'd have been okay that there wasn't really a fight between them, because there wasn't. I'm okay with that, but I wish there was some kind of connection between them, because there really wasn't here. Okay.
Jeff, what about you? Do you agree with Andy?
I can see why that's an issue, and I can also come up with plausible reasons why it's not as much of an issue. For example, let's say Ezra is becoming more of a Jedi and becoming less attached to things and people. If there's this personal conflict between them, that's an opportunity for Ezra to start slipping over to the dark side again and being more angry about things. So the more detached he is, the more more able he is to channel pure Jedi-ness, I guess. So that's something I just came up with. As far as my own reactions to this, I was very happy with the devastation that was brought on by Thrawn. And also, I'd actually never noticed the underside of his ship, so that was kind of cool seeing the dragon inscribed there. Really fit with his personality.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I would disagree with Andy in that there isn't a link between them. I think there is. And the link is that Thrawn says it himself, and this kind of ties back into why I think this was the only way for the finale to end, for the series to end, was with this finale. Because the whole thing with Thrawn and Ezra is that, the whole thing with Thrawn is that he studies history, arts, culture so much that he can predict how people will act. And similarly, he does that with the Jedi. He says that the Jedi are so predictable that everything you do, you follow this code, you follow this moral, and it's so predictable, and that's why I will always beat you. And the whole thing with him and Ezra, maybe it's not really paid off face to face in that scene we get when they first meet, but it is paid off because what's the one thing that separates Ezra from every other Jedi? His link to animals, that connection he creates with animals. So what's the one thing that makes him different from other Jedi? What's the one thing that Thrawn doesn't expect?
He has squids.
Is the squids, it's the space whales and the wolves. He doesn't expect this. He says it, remember when he says for Price, he's like, I didn't expect her to fail this hard, because he's not imagining the wolves. He's not imagining they're gonna help. He's like, I don't know. I just feel like that there is this kind of psychological battle between them, but it's less philosophical and more like a chess game where it's like, I'm going to beat you this way. And it's like, haha, no, I actually outmaneuvered you. Cause that's the whole thing with Thrawn.
Yes, and I like that about Thrawn. I like that he's like a chess master. I like that a lot, but I think I would have liked it a lot more if he didn't get caught at the end there. I don't feel like this was the situation that would beat Thrawn, because he's just so good at everything he does. I think that's what kind of broke what I didn't like about this, because Thrawn always has a plan, no matter what, and he has through the show. And I didn't buy that this is what got him. But we'll talk about at the end. He might not be dead. We don't know that.
He might not be dead, and he also his strong suit is that he knows everything about someone, and he uses that to his advantage. He doesn't know about the animals, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So that's kind of why he's outmaneuvered. If he knew, then I promise you, he probably would have outmaneuvered that too, but he didn't, and that's how it all kind of comes together. So I do think there is this kind of face-off between Thrawn and Ezra, which is question mark over. I don't know. I think that there's more there, even though it's not a philosophical battle. I think there is something there worth.
Yeah, I think I also think it would be a little more fun if Ezra was a little more of a chess master himself. Yeah, because I think he was a little bit of one in this episode, but we'd never seen this type of planning from him ever before. I don't think, besides this episode, which was cool to see.
And the Kanan episode, because Kanan, he was the one who led that fight or that plan.
Yeah, but I just I think Thrawn is a lot more fun when there's someone on the other side of him trying to outmaneuver him. And I don't think this show reached that. That's what I'm upset about with Thrawn, because Thrawn was a great villain who didn't have a great foil to be his opponent.
Gotcha. So what did you guys think of Palpatine? There's a reason why I'm not really going to spend a lot of time talking about like their mission to restart the shield generators, because that's like, that's it's a little boring. They managed to do it, and one of the clones dies. And that's
wow,
it.
You don't even remember his name? Amazing.
No,
his name
I know every other. No, Wolf is the one with the eyes. He's like the one with the right eye. I know everybody but him. I know Rex.
You're right.
And I know Wolf, but
okay, you're right.
Anyway, so we have Palpatine. We have Ezra meeting Palpatine, because again, I'm not going to spend much time with that kind of subplot happening. It's pretty straightforward. So what did you guys think of Palpatine? And we saw him as the the old man, the kind old man. Yeah, the not disfigured man. What did you guys think of him? Were you happy to see like not disfigured Palpatine?
I think this was a fun way to show Palpatine. I was really excited when the scene started and we saw Palpatine young and Ezra saw him, because I don't think Ezra knew that the guy that was Force lightninging him in the temple was the Emperor. I don't think he knew that. Did he?
I think he did.
Did Ahsoka say it?
Yeah. No, wait. No, he did know, because remember when you like when you have when they first hear his voice on the phone, like they know on the comms, like they're like it, like they know who it is. That's why they're so freaked out.
Oh,
I don't think it needed to be like said, but like that visceral reaction of we need to get out. Like this is way too big now. Like I do think they knew who he was.
Okay, but it either way, this was a good play by Palpatine. It feels like, again, this feels like a chess master play, like where he's like, I'm going to put on this good face for him and make it look like I'm the good guy. And it was, I really liked this. I really liked the idea of this here.
Yeah, it was very reminiscent of like the Anakin Palpatine relationship, which was really nice. What about you, Jeff? Did you enjoy the Palpatine cameo?
Yes. I always, what I would have loved more was if, it wouldn't have played very well as far as narratively goes, but it would have just been an awesome moment if someone, because it's this trope, right? The bad guy shows up being all seductive and like, come join me and look into the portal and see your possible future, and then you'll get hooked and transfigured and you'll want to go in. Where just want someone to say, no, I'm not walking over there. I'm just going to tear down this temple. See you, bye.
Yeah.
Like, I just want someone to do that, and that could have been that, but it wasn't. Anyways, I liked exactly, in addition to the reveal, the way his real persona just started flickering in and out.
That was a nice visual cue.
And then the red guard at the end was pretty cool. A bit cut short. But
yes. I mean, Andy has thoughts on was it you, Andy, who had thoughts on the red guard in the Discord?
Oh, I think that was more Michael, not me.
Michael, okay.
I wasn't as upset about them.
Because, Jeff, do you think that did the red guards in Rebels reach the level of epicness that the red guards in The Last Jedi achieved?
You know what? I don't know if I was such a fan of that scene with the red guards in Last Jedi. It just seemed very
You're
jumbled.
Just wrong then, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. It's like it just I don't know if the cinematography and looked very staged, I guess. Weapons were cool, moves were cool. Like the ingredients were all there. I don't know if I just didn't buy it too much.
I think that's fair. It was a very fair. It was like, it very much looked like they were set on a stage on purpose to fight that way.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah.
They weren't on a world. They were, it was definitely, yeah.
Totally. This room was set up specifically for like this big action piece. There was no other purpose for this room, honestly.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I mean, and like, Rian Johnson did in his inspiration to create that scene, that actual set was from an actual play. Like the colors and all that, it came from a place, so it makes sense that it was much more like it feels more staged because that's where the inspiration came from. But I'm
just spoiled by Clone Wars and Last Jedi and Rebels with the dynamic that you can get out of CGI characters, like the sort of moves they can pull off without stretching the imagination Like, oh yeah, and I could totally do that, like triple backflip over and then force wheel, whatever. Whereas you try and do that in live action, it just starts looking fake.
Right. Yes, exactly. Okay. Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, Ezra, one question. Do you guys think that Ezra, like, what would have happened if Ezra would have accepted, like, if he would have accepted what Palpatine offered? Was like Palpatine, like, just using him, like, to get to the other world? Like, is that what that portal was just a way for Palpatine to enter? Can Palpatine enter the other world? Like, why is he being rejected? Like, there's just a lot of, like, Force stuff happening here that isn't really explored, and it shouldn't be explored. It's something else. Like, it's a side thing. But what did you guys think of it?
I think it's an effective introduction to this concept, although if they want to explore it in film, they're going to have to reintroduce it all over again, because, like, no one who watches those films is going to have watched this and appreciate it, you know? So, I don't know. I kind of doubt they'll ever revisit this in any other medium besides a TV show. But yeah, I think that the idea is that, like, if Ezra goes into the portal, all of a sudden Palpatine can go in and control time, space, past, present, future, that sort of thing.
Yeah. My question is just, why can't he, though? Like, what's keeping him from entering? Is it just that he's too dark?
Remember, because the daughter was the one who could enter. You need to have,
you're right.
You have to have the light side to get in. You have to have the dark side to close it.
Yeah, you're right. Forgot
so
about that.
So then Ezra being able to close it is interesting.
Yes.
I mean, he had a brush with Maul and the whole.
We did. I think we touched on this when we talked about episode 13, Beatriz.
Yes. Yes. Like, I feel like Ezra was probably one of the few who can open and close it, because he's had he's been touched both by the light and the dark, so he's kind of this kind of gray figure in that sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's continue on. Let's move back to the crew and where they've been. So that crew that got, like, stopped by Rook, like, they wake up again, like, they basically, like, he knocks them out and then goes on his journey and does what he has to do. So they kind of wake up and they're like, oh, right, the special mission that Ezra told us. And they basically just have to take a ship and start, what's that word? With the radio, like, no, what's the radio?
Transmitting on
transmit. That's the word. They have to transmit. I was like, radio-fi. No, it's just like I was thinking in Spanish all day, so it's kind of like going back to English is a little bit tricky.
I get it now.
But yes, so they had to transmit this signal out in this channel that isn't often used, and everyone's like, "Well, what, why? What's the whole thing?" And it's the space whales. Space whales are back. I don't appreciate them being called squids. Like, I know that they're, like, half squid, but, like, don't take space whales away from me. Like, don't take them away from me. It's space whales, not space squid. So
Fine.
they come and they destroy all the Star Destroyers. As this happens, Ezra, like, destroys the temple, rushes past Palpatine, and traps Thrawn inside his own ship. And the crew on the other side also manages to restart the shield generators, so the city's safe no matter what happens. So, tell me, guys, thoughts. Space whales, go.
So, I think it's sort of like a Rose on the wooden board situation with Titanic. It's like on his face, you can see, like, you know, Ezra could totally have just, like, gone out of there the moment the moment Thrawn was, you know, halfway enclosed in those tentacles, and he would have been fine. Why did he have to go down with the ship? But then they sort of established that he is incredibly strong and very, like, proficient with martial arts. So it's possible. Yeah, it's possible for me to assume that he would have gotten out without the constant Force pressure there. So that allows me to accept the necessity of Ezra's demise here.
Yeah. What about you, Andy? Do you buy this kind of end to Ezra and the space whales?
by the end, do you mean like him dying, or do you mean like this ending to the episode?
This ending to his character in this show, because we don't know what happens, but this ending for Ezra, and also the space whales coming.
This matches Ezra's MO. Like, of all things, like, this matches Ezra's character. This is what Ezra do. Like you said, he always had an affinity with animals. I don't like how the space whales came back. I do like how it connects to Ezra. I do like that Ezra got to use this tied to animals to beat Thrawn. That is cool. You have convinced me of that. But
my job is done.
Yes, you did convince me of that. But I'm not ready to say how I feel about this, because this is clearly a sequel hook. We're clearly not done with this shot. We're not done with this ship even, I'm sure. I'm sure Ezra and Thrawn will show up again. Otherwise, they'd have died more assuredly, I think. So I'm not really ready to say whether I'm good with Ezra's demise here, because I think there's going to be more of him.
Okay. Well, also, walk me through this, guys. The glass was broken, the thing. So if he goes into hyperspace, I'm assuming they'd arrive in space, unless if they leave hyperspace within a planet's atmosphere, they'd arrive at another planet's atmosphere or something.
Jeff? Let's not have the argument again. But we've had this discussion on Voltron before, right?
We've had many discussions on Voltron. Which one are you referring to?
The one where we talked about whether you can survive in space for a little bit. We've had this discussion.
Oh, okay. I probably came down on the side that you can.
Yes, and you convinced me that you can survive for a little bit.
Okay, but if it was hard vacuum for a while, he would die. However, there's two things to keep in mind. First, the glass was being suspended in the air as they were, like, warping, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a very cool effect, by the way. But that's evidence that he's holding things together, and it's possible he could, like, hold the atmosphere in long enough to get to safety. Second, once those tentacles are out of the windows, we've seen tech in the universe of, emergency bulkheads closing over broken glass, like in episode 3, I believe.
Yeah.
So there are options.
And I think in an earlier episode, I forget which one, I think it was the one you were talking about with Fulcrum and Thrawn, a man on the inside. That episode, they put up the shields to stop air escaping. They put up the shields of the ship, and that stopped air escaping from the ship.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. So you're telling me that the whale's poor tentacles are in danger of being cut off?
Yes.
Oh man, PETA's not going to be happy about this. But yeah, okay, well, also on top of that, we do have, like, in The Last Jedi, we have the whole Leia thing that happened. But granted, she is the daughter of the most powerful Force user in the world.
Yeah.
Like, and not in the world, but, like, in the universe. Like, so she is much more powerful in the Force, I think is safe to say, than Ezra.
Yeah.
Even though he may be more, trained. He's more trained. I don't think it's controversial to say, like, yes, but Leia's a Skywalker. That is another level of Force wielding.
So anyone who's like doesn't like that Leia did that, you're wrong. Because if Ezra can do it too, that's just messed up. It's not like Leia can do it, Ezra can't. That's just a hard stop.
Yep.
Something interesting. Oh, go on.
No, yeah, please. I was just going to talk about Leia and how she's awesome. So please.
Well, let's do more of that. But I'm also curious what effect, if any, being wrapped in space whale tentacles will have when those tentacles start going to light speed. Like, is he going to be deformed? Is he going to be fused with them? That'd be kind of cool. Like, he takes over a space whale and just becomes Space Thrawn.
You say, ooh.
That'll be interesting. I mean, but, like, is it, but here's the thing about the mechanics of the space whales. Like, is it through the tentacles that you get, like, a force that takes you so fast that it pushes you to light speed? Or is it simply that they have this ability is it through the tentacles, or is it just that the tentacles light up, but it's actually through their minds and the tentacles don't really have much to do with the light speed? There's just a lot of questions about space whales.
I think the more important thing is what the look of it, what the visual tells the audience, and the audience sees it and sees the tentacles lighting up. That means a lot more than what they were intending. Because if the audience sees that, they imply that something's happening to Thrawn or something's happening through the tentacles. So I think that's more important than whatever they had planned in the first place, because it looks cool, and I agree with Jeff. That'd be really cool if this affected Thrawn in some way.
Oh my god, Thrawn's going to be able to light speed.
Like,
imagine. Like, he becomes the Flash of the universe.
Yeah. If Thrawn gets some kind of way to, like, really be awesome in fights, I would be down with it, because I need Thrawn to be in more stuff.
Well, I mean, maybe, like, you know, the whales are super linked to the Force.
Yeah.
So maybe after this kind of makes him kind of be more sensitive to the Force. And it's not necessarily that he becomes, like, Force, like, he can use the Force voluntarily, but maybe he becomes a little bit faster, a little bit stronger. You know what I mean?
The way I would see Thrawn getting attuned to the Force would be that he would get that, like, sixth sense thing, and he could, like, just dodge people a lot better. He would just have this, like, mind's eye thing going on, and he would just be impossible to keep down. And that might just be, and that's all he gets from the Force, but I could see him getting attuned to the Force because of this encounter with these whales in this way.
Yeah. I get that. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, who knows? He might not be alive, or he may be.
Who knows? I would
who
be
can
really
say?
But on the bright side, this means that he could have survived through the original trilogy, and that's all that matters.
And I will say, like, it's like similar to comic books that you don't know if someone's gone unless you actually see the body.
Yeah.
Same with Star Wars. I mean, look at Maul. Like, Maul legit got cut in half, and he survived.
I think
so.
But in their defense, every time we have seen a body, they've been assuredly dead. So that's, like, they've been keeping with that.
Absolutely. So that is true. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens, and we'll talk about what we hope is to come with, like, Star Wars and animation in the end. But let's talk about, very, very briefly, let's just talk about poor Hera. I mean, she lost her partner, and now she lost essentially her foster kid. Like, let's talk about this, because that was heartbreaking.
It was.
And I mean, I kind of wish I got a tear from her. I wish a little bit.
They definitely made her face more terrified than anyone else. Like, so it's telling that Ezra went to talk to Sabine to let him out, because Hera just was not going to let it happen. Because Hera, more than anyone else in the crew, I think Hera loved Ezra as a son, and it was heartbreaking seeing Hera's reaction to it. I was surprised by how much I felt for Hera in that moment, because it's just heart-wrenching knowing that Ezra's gone, and and as he's doing this, he's doing the same thing that Kanan did, the exact same force maneuver.
Yeah. And
it's
he's
really
holding
sad.
his arms, like, he's in the same position, like.
Yeah,
it is heart-wrenching. What about you, Jeff? Any thoughts on Hera?
Hera, the only things I had to think about with her really went down in episode 13 and 14. So she's cool. I mean, okay, well, there are some questions, but yeah. Anyways.
Gotcha.
Sequence. Anyways.
Okay, well, then let's move on to this epilogue that happens.
Well, before you do that, you forget when Sabine got Ezra's lightsaber, because that's important.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty cool.
As soon as she got the lightsaber, I'm like, oh, I wish we got a series about Sabine. The moment she picked up Ezra's lightsaber, I'm like, why couldn't she do this sooner? Because I didn't know this was an option.
I mean, it's just another reminder that I still think she should have been the one with the dark saber. Like, she should have kept it. Personally.
Well, but I somehow like her more with this green lightsaber, because it's so much more like when you see this Mandalorian with the lightsaber and they're not a Jedi, it's so much story behind it. It feels so cool. Just if you ran into this person randomly in the universe, this person who's clearly a good person with a lightsaber, but they're not a Jedi. It's just so cool.
And I mean, it does fit with her, artistic tendencies to have like a colorful lightsaber than the dark, like.
Than the dark.
Just one that's dark, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, fair. You won me over. But, so then let's move to the epilogue.
Yes.
So, they jumped far into the future. I did not expect them to jump into post-Battle of Endor.
No, there was no way that I expected this. I was like, oh, we're jumping forward like a couple weeks. And then, nope, not at all.
Like, I was expecting, like, there being, like, a scene where, I don't know, it's after the first Death Star blows up, and, like, I don't know, Sabine and Hera meet up with Leia, and then you hear Luke in the background, or Han in the background, but you don't actually see him. Like, that's what I was expecting. For them to jump past the trilogy, I mean, granted, I could have wanted, like, maybe a little bit more, like, hints of, like, what they were doing while this was all happening, but, I mean... That was bold.
Like, the thing I was expecting, like, at most, was them to be, like, in the crowd for the celebration of A New Hope when everyone's getting their medal. That was, like, the big jump I was expecting. But at most, just to, like, tie everything in. But no, we didn't even get that. They're just like, nope, we're just blowing past everything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that was kind of crazy. Jeff, did you expect such a big time jump?
Not at all. I'm right there with Andy. It was part of what made me like this finale so much. And then we got to see, Ahsoka again, which was very nice.
Yes. I mean, she survived she's alive throughout the trilogy. She is there, and a lot of questions of, well, then what was she doing? Like, while all this was happening, was the main question. And then two, well, then, can she meet Leia? Okay, sorry. I really want Ahsoka and Leia to meet really badly, and I don't remember if in the Star Wars novel Bloodline, Leia says that anyone other than her, Han and Luke, knew that Vader was her father, but technically by that point, Ahsoka would be dead, so it would still make sense if she would find out. I need a scene with them, and I need it bad. Yes, Andy, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, what we really need is, we talked about this, we need the Ahsoka Sabine romance here. We had a long conversation about whether it was okay for them to have that.
Yeah, we had to check their birth dates, we had to check ages, we were like, does this check out? And I think it does. I would say it does.
Yeah,
like I
think we figured out that Sabine was like 21 at the end here, and Ahsoka was 30 something. I think
33. I think 33. There's like a 12-year difference.
But they're both adults.
Yeah, exactly. They're
good.
They're adults. Like, if it's two consenting adults, it works out.
Also, Ahsoka's race, I think, lives a little longer, so there's that too.
Yes, I don't know if that's true, but yes, that could be also something.
I think you're right. I think I'm confusing stuff with D&D stuff. Yeah. I think we don't know how long her race lives. I
mean, we might. I mean, who knows? Like, there's so much information. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
But before we skip over this, I mean, hello, Hera was pregnant. With,
that's questions I had about Hera.
And not just pregnant, but her baby. His name is Jason. Anyone who, like, is a fan of the expanded universe of Star Wars, like, mind blown.
Oh, so why is this important? Can you explain to me? I don't know.
Okay, let me explain it. So in the expanded universe, that no longer matters, because when Disney bought Star Wars, they said that that's not canon anymore. Han and Leia had twins, Jason and Jaina, solo. Kylo Ren essentially took the Jason storyline, which is that Jason was this guy who turns bad, he becomes a Sith, and very, very similar to Kylo Ren. And then Jaina becomes like the one who defeats him. She essentially is the one who takes up the Rey role, and that's why so many people thought that Rey was related to Kylo Ren, because there's like an actual drawing of like a book cover, like that they actually drew where she's featured. And no joke, that picture of Jaina Solo looks so much like Daisy Ridley. So I remember when they first cast Daisy Ridley and I saw her picture, I was like, oh my God, it's Jaina Solo, because I just remember that.
I knew that in the extended universe they had twins. I didn't know their names. I didn't know that Jason was one of their names. Yeah, so, like, what does this mean? Like, that's not an accident. That is a very intentional decision to name this kid Jason. So, a lot of questions. One, is he force sensitive? Two, he would be, like, about the same age. Like, he could maybe slightly older than Kylo, but
I mean, he would definitely be trained by Luke. Definitely be part of that group. Is he one of the Knights of Ren, is what I'm saying.
I think the bigger... Yeah, he could be that. But one of the bigger things is if we have a series, because we're going to be post-trilogy here, we could have a whole plot thread with Luke starting up his own temple before Kylo killed everybody or took them on to the Knights of Ren. And Jason could be a big part of that. And that'd be really interesting to see. To have some like a character on the inside seeing that.
Totally. I mean, I don't think we're going to get anything that is that touches on at least on Ben Solo, on Kylo Ren. We're not going to get anything with him until Episode 9's release.
Yes,
like he's not going to appear for a while on the animated form.
It could be completely possible that they're waiting to release another show until after 9 comes out.
Oh, I hope not, because that means we'd have to wait until like next year. Like we'd have to wait like 2 years for that show, I guess.
But I mean, like
a while.
But I mean, we're not hearing anything about them starting it yet, so that makes about sense with the timeline because we haven't heard anything. We haven't heard any rumors.
No. There's a rumor. There's a rumor that the next show is going to be called Star Wars Resistance.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
And that it's going to continue. It's going to happen during either the original trilogy or after the original trilogy.
I want it after. We need to see the Sabine Ahsoka buddy cop thing.
I think it's going to be after. I think it's truly going to be like after the original trilogy. This is when it's going to happen. But that's what I mean. It's like, well, we could the fact that his name is Jason already tells us so much. It's like, he's gonna be so force sensitive. He's gonna be like dragged into the dark side. Whether or not he fully turns, who knows, but he's definitely gonna be tempted. And it's just, there's so much there. And I am so excited. And I will say, like, why is it that all, like, the Jedi are really good flyers? I feel like, except for, like, the old Jedi, like Kenobi, Yoda, Qui-Gon, like Anakin, Luke, Jason, because he said that he has his mother's gift of flying.
Yep.
Rey, Kylo, we saw him do a lot of twirls and stuff. So, they're just all really good at flying. And it's like, what gives, guys? Why do you guys get to be so good at everything? But, having, on first viewing, like that detail of him being called Jason completely flew past me. And then when I rewatched it, I kind of just had a meltdown. I was like, oh my God, it's Jason. But Jeff, are you familiar with the expanded universe? Did you like catch this or?
Not at all. Entirely over my head.
Are you excited now that I told you?
Yes.
Awesome. I did my job then. So on top of Hera and her journey that we see to come to a close, we have Zeb taking Kallus back to his new homeworld to meet his other people and have Kallus being taken in as one of their own. What did you guys think of this? Like, I personally thought okay, but I wanted there to be much more of a relationship between Zeb and Kallus, in that, like, I wanted that to be more explored. I feel like they had that one episode, and then that's it. I kind of wanted more from them.
I did too, and I think that I didn't like how... I would have liked if it was a little more somber when Kallus met up with this race that he thought he had killed, because it was much more like a, hey, hello, and I thought that didn't really match the tone of what had happened previously.
Yeah. What about you, Jeff? Were you fine with this ending? Did you wish it would have been something different?
I didn't really have much else in mind for them. They weren't really top of my mind, so the fact that they got that little scene was fun enough for me.
Gotcha. Poor Zeb. He's never been one of the top people for anyone. I have yet to meet someone who loves Zeb.
I did not know until this finale that Zeb is basically Amon from...
Oh, yeah.
He is.
And now
you're right.
Yeah.
That's funny. So, all right. So let's get back to Sabine, who like has this awesome new haircut that I love.
Yes.
And so what does her new journey with Ahsoka mean for the greater context of Star Wars? Like, are they the new adults for the next iteration of the animated shows? Like, are they going to take up the Kanan Hera position of like, we're the adults of the crew?
I hope not, because I really just want Sabine to be the main character finally. I'm fine with Ahsoka not being the main character if Sabine gets to be. And that means Ahsoka gets to teach Sabine how to use her lightsaber. Like, that's gonna be awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty rad. But I mean, that's the thing though. Like, it's still Disney XD. Like, we still need like a kid, you know?
I know, and that kid's probably gonna be Jason. It's gonna be Jason.
Like, that would be pretty rad. But yeah, and yeah, do you guys think, like, do you think that Sabine and Ahsoka are going to be part of, like, the crew for the next season? Or do you think it's going to be more like Sabine's going to take on Ahsoka's role in the next show, in that Ahsoka kind of came as a cameo, and now Sabine's going to be, like, she's going to cameo in the next show? I think that's more likely. That's not what I want, but I think that's more likely. I think what I'd really like is that now that we have this giant chunk of time between 6 and 7 with stuff going on, we can finally have an Ahsoka movie. We can have an Ahsoka movie, and we can have Sabine live action and Ahsoka live action. We can do this because Disney's just making all these movies about Han Solo and making movies that by the way, does not look good, and making movies about they have another Solo movie planned, don't they? An Obi-Wan movie. Like, make an Ahsoka movie. Let's do it. Let's just have Ahsoka live action. I'm so excited. I'm so ready for that. I mean, maybe. I hope so. Jeff, what do you hope for the next animated series? And do you want an Ahsoka film?
I don't know if there's I did not find myself, like, chomping at the bit for more Ahsoka just on the face of it. I mean, I definitely trust that they can do something super cool, but I feel like Ahsoka and Sabine I could see them tag teaming as both being like a cameo figure, sort of like how Ahsoka was in this show. Like the dynamic duo that swoops in sometimes, literally, to save the day. I could see that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so do you guys have any closing thoughts about this finale, about the future of Star Wars, the future of Star Wars Animated? Any last thoughts that you want to express before we finish off? Jeff?
I'm just really grateful we have these things, and can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Cool. Andy?
I think the biggest lesson we can take from this show is that any Star Wars show aimed at kids like this, aimed at a younger audience where they, on like Disney XD, where they can't show a lot of violence, we need enough lightsaber users so that we can have lightsaber battles. Because lightsaber battles are the perfect action thing for lower rating shows, because they're really super dangerous, but they don't look it. So people who are older can be like, yeah, that looks really dangerous and really cool. But young people are like, oh, they're just waving around laser sticks. And so I think that means that we just need not a ton, just a couple more, because I think the action in the first season is a lot better than the action in these later seasons, because I just want more lightsaber battles. I want more battles that look like they actually have stakes. And if we're going original trilogy, that leaves us space to have a few more people with lightsabers running around the galaxy. And that excites me. Yeah,
totally. All right. Well, then I will leave with my final theory, the final thing I can take from this episode and read too much into. So Ezra leaves a message for the crew right after the whole event, right before the epilogue. He leaves this message where he says, quote, "There were several paths in front of me. While this wasn't the one I wanted to take, it's what I had to do." End quote. I think that line is really meta for the writers explaining the finale.
Yeah.
Where they said, look, there were so many ways to end this, but this was the only way we could to service the characters and service the show that we set out to create.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just found that to be really poignant from thinking about the writers and thinking about how the show ends, and them kind of realizing that, hey, maybe this may not be reach the epic levels of the previous episodes, but this is what we had to do. And I can just imagine how many drafts of this script they had to make, because like anything, like I can just imagine how much they had to like sweat over it.
To be clear, I want to be clear, because I was really negative earlier. I understand how hard this was to make. That hasn't because they have to make sure it fits into the original trilogy, and it fits and it leads into that without being against what happens in that. I get that.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I understand it was really hard. I just want to be clear about that, and I really do not envy them for the finale they had to make. But I'm really happy that we got at least the 4 episodes prior to this, because those were incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, in Clone Wars, they had a lot more freedom.
Yes.
And I feel like in the next thing they do, now that we're past this period between the prequels and the originals, they're going to have so much more breathing room to be able to do things, because there's so much time between the original and the sequel trilogy that there's not much that can be swayed one way or another. They
could just throw in a random Sith Lord into between the two, and it wouldn't affect anything in the sequel trilogy. They could have a random Sith Lord come up.
They can tell the origins of the Grand Leader. Snoke, yeah.
Yeah. Snoke, they can tell the origins of Kylo. They could do so much stuff that they now have the freedom to do. And I think that, with the actual sequel trilogies, there's so little time passes. Like, there isn't a time jump from Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. So it really, those 2 films really happen in the span of 6 months maybe? It feels like perhaps maybe a year. Maybe for episode 9, there will be a substantial time jump, but for these 2, it happens in a short amount of time. So they have room to while that's happening, something else can be happening too,
And I think I mentioned earlier, but I hope that whatever sequel series we get, we have Thrawn. Thrawn comes back, because I really just want more Thrawn.
Do you want more Ezra though? Because if Thrawn comes back, then Ezra must come back too.
I have nothing wrong with Ezra. I've never had anything wrong with Ezra. He's fine. I think that if Thrawn comes back, Ezra has to come back in some way, and I'd be fine with that.
Totally, absolutely. But yeah, so that does it for this podcast. You can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. Join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Ryan, aka Brian. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Andy, and Hugh. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.